Hey, Michael Church here, Crawl Space Ninja. Today I've got Gavin Hardcastle, and this is a little bit of a different video for us because Gavin is living in Canada. He actually has his own YouTube channel where him and his wife are recently purchased a church that they're renovating to live in. And we've been going back and forth about what they need to do with their church. And I decided to have Gavin on and talk to him about what he's planning on doing and send you over to his channel to check out what all they're doing on their church too. So Gavin, I appreciate you being my guest here on Crawl Space Ninja's YouTube channel. How you doing today?
Thanks for having me on, Michael. I'm doing pretty good. It's really cold. We just had our first snowstorm, which apparently, Nova Scotia is kind of famous for terrible snowstorms. So I've moved here from Vancouver Island, and this is my first taste of it, and it's really quite shocking. It really is.
I bet. So you said, now just so you know, I'm an American and I don't use metric, but you said you got 11 centimeters. How much is that in inches? How much is that? Is that
4 inches.
yeah, 4 inches. Okay, all right. So anyway, so if you start throwing out all these weird metric terms, I might have to break out Google and find out what you're talking about because 11 centimeters sounds horrible, but yeah, 4 inches, that's not too bad, right?
It's not too bad.
So tell us a little bit. You went over there and the crawl space. What was going on down there after all the snow you got?
Well, it started yesterday with just a cold temperature. So for the very first time, I noticed, and this is the coldest I've seen it since we've only been here since the spring. So, I've got no reference, but I noticed that there was ice on the inside of the windows that are in the basement. So I thought that's not a good sign. Usually the ice is on the outside. And there's no heat source in there right now, but we do have power. So yesterday, before I left, I plugged in like a little space heater, and that did get rid of the ice. But I mean, that's what concerns me about having this moisture in the basement is you've got that freeze thaw cycle, which moves these sort of soil embankments that I've got in my basement, which are just kind of shoring up the foundation walls. So I just want to deal with this moisture. And I mean, the reason why I found your channel, Michael, is because I've been doing every problem that I have. I then have to research and figure out, well, what's my solution? So I was on YouTube, and I was looking for crawl space encapsulation or basement encapsulation, all kinds of terminology that I used to try and just figure out what was going on. And your channel was just like a wealth of info. So not only did it just like give me a ton of education straight away, but it was just a good, entertaining channel to watch because usually these things are so boring. I mean, crawl space, it's not the most exciting topic, is it? Right?
No, it's not.
It was good. I found it interesting and I learned from it. And then well, I mean, I'm doing a whole YouTube channel about this whole renovation, this 100-year-old church in Nova Scotia. And I thought, why don't I just contact Michael and see if he wants to do like a little collaboration, and you can come on my channel, I'll come on yours. And quite frankly, I'm stingy, so I just didn't want to pay for expert advice. So you've been really good in giving me tons of free advice, and I already feel better with the direction that things are going. So that's where I'm at right now.
Well, that just shows you how cheap I am, is that I'll give free advice to anybody who will put me on their channel. So thanks for offering to do that, Gavin. And just so the viewers know, he's going to say basement at least 300 times. He's got a crawl space. All right, it's not a basement. It's a dirt floor basement. Okay, so but he always likes to call it basement. So I just wanted to call him out on that. So
I figured if you could stand up in it, you're not crawling, so I figured that's a basement, right?
Well, yeah, but we still call it just for purposes, we'll call it a dirt floor basement or a crawl space. Yeah. So now listen, you first of all, I think it's amazing that you all bought a church to live in, and it's like you said, it's an older church. And for our viewers, I'm going to put a link to his. He's got two channels. You're a photographer. And then you're also renovating this church, and you dedicated a channel to that. I'm going to put a link to that. But you've had all kinds of issues, man. You've had the one video I loved watching was the one where y'all had to put in a septic. And that was a great video. So make sure you check that out, viewers, if you get a chance. But what possessed you and your wife to purchase a church? Especially,
I
I
asked
mean,
my,
100-year-old house is challenging. I can't
yeah,
imagine what 100-year-old church is going to be like to fix that crawl space. So,
I ask myself that question every time I walk in there, Michael. And well, actually, no. There's days when I walk in there and no work has been done, and I just think, why did I do this? And then there's days when there's progress, and then I just think, yes, this is the best thing I ever did. Because as you progress, you see the end goal, right? You see the potential, you see where this is going. And I've built a house before, I've done renovations before, so when you can see it start to take shape, it's extremely satisfying. And the reason why I picked this particular property is just because it's unusual, and it had so much potential to be something spectacular and unique, and something where I just want to spend, all my days for the rest of my life, rather than just, another house. Because I've been living in rented accommodation for a few years now, since I sold the house that I built years ago. And you just don't, when you rent, you just don't put love into the place that you live in. And when you build something, or even better, when you restore something that's got a history, it's got character, it's got a soul, then all you're doing is you're adding more soul and character to that thing that's uniquely yours, but it does have its own story. And so I just couldn't resist that. I knew kind of what I was getting myself into, but it does expand constantly. This, especially with the crawl space, I'll call it a crawl space now, because I didn't see, I bought this place sight unseen. I didn't even check it out until we arrived here. So we packed up all of our stuff, we sold everything, put the 2 cats in a camper, and drove all the way across Canada. And that was the first time we'd seen the church after I'd bought it. So, there were some nasty surprises, but then there were some things that I thought were a lot better. There were like, we ripped out all of the walls, we ripped out all of the old lath and plaster, and I thought that there would be moldy, wet rot timbers. Nothing. It's absolutely pristine. So really, the only problems were roof and the attic space, and then the basement.
right.
So that's where I'm putting all of my money and all of my energy, because I figure if you fix those 2 problems, you've everything in between is just a matter of time.
Well, and the interesting thing about an older house like you're talking about is they used, normally back in the day, they would use rough sawn oak. Like they would set up, the mill right there on the site and go and cut the trees down and break them down. And compared to the building materials we use today, that's why it's able to stand up to the mold and the dampness and the moisture and all that kind of stuff. You take some of the pine we use today to build these houses, I've seen them like within 12 to 18 months, brand new, rotted out completely, because of moisture, where something like, I mean, it's almost petrified wood.
Yeah.
I'm sure your guys trying to drive a nail into that subfloor probably isn't easy. How hard that wood is. It really is true hardwood. So
It is. It's kind of brittle too. I mean, some of the lumber I've had to cut through, because we've cut, doors and windows, and we've put dormer windows in. And when you cut through those old timbers, they're so heavy, they're so dense. It's like a whole different material. Interestingly enough, one time I was traveling through Thailand, and I went somewhere that had this petrified wood. And they were kind of like stone ornaments. Like you could sit in this chair that was made of petrified wood. It was something like, I don't know if it was 3,000-year-old wood, but when you felt it, it felt like stone. It had a completely different texture. Anyway, I'm getting totally off topic there. It's nothing to do with crawl spaces.
that's all right. That's all right. All right. So, what's the timeline with this? And are you planning on doing this work yourself, or are you just gonna kind of oversee the project? Tell us a little bit about what's going on.
Well, with the crawl space, you mean the whole thing in general, or the crawl space?
The crawl space particularly.
Well,
You know,
yeah, it depends on it depends on if I can get someone to do it. I mean, obviously, I'd rather not do it myself, but I am prepared to do it because I've already done a lot of work down there. You'll see in some more episodes that are coming up, you'll see me spending quite a bit of time in there. But it's just a case of if I can get someone in at the right time, you know, if I can just get people in when I need them in. If not, then I'll just do it all myself. But I'll be honest, I don't feel totally confident if I'm having to build concrete forms. I've never done that before. So if that is how I end up doing these sort of retaining walls that I need to do, then I'll probably get a professional in to do that. But I think once that's done, when it comes to the encapsulation, I think that's just a case of hard work, and I'll probably just do that part of it myself. You know, the pea gravel, the plastic, putting in a dehumidifier, all that kind of stuff. I like to think I could handle that, but when it comes to like the concrete forms, that's a little bit out of my expertise level, I would say.
well, and I'm gonna put up a picture. This is basically what Gavin is dealing with right now. Is you've got, you know, the erosion from the foundation wall eroding in towards the crawl space. So what Gavin wants to do is to build some retaining walls and then fill the back side of that up with pea gravel, so that that way it kind of locks that erosion in place and it's not going to crumble in on him as he encapsulate the crawl space. So, you know, you need a mason or someone who's pretty familiar about putting in footers and rebar and all that kind of stuff. And you know, I don't blame you. That's some difficult work. We've done a few of those projects and we've always lost money on them because they always wind up being a huge pain. I respect the mason that can make any money at doing those kind of projects because they're not easy to do. So I would definitely farm that out to somebody else, you know. But yeah, the back breaking stuff like filling it with pea gravel, you know, putting the plastic down, all that kind of stuff should be pretty easy. I mean, it's not easy. You know, I've done some interviews with some veterans that have been on deployment in Afghanistan that said they felt like the deployment was harder than actually encapsulating their crawl space. So we'll see what you think of it after it's all said and done. That's why normally I'm doing videos and not in the crawl space anymore, right? So, but anyway, it's a good project, and I'm looking forward to seeing you as you take this project further. So tell us some of the issues that you've been dealing with down there. I know we've got obviously the erosion of the soil. What else? I mean, is it damp? You got a lot of mold. What else is going on down there?
Well, the biggest problem was, and I kind of knew about this because I paid for a professional inspector to look at the property. And he said, you know, straight up front, quite a lot of the floor joists, they're moldy, they're rotten, they've already been sistered, and the sistered part is rotten too. So the first thing I did when I talked to contractors here, the first job I gave them was to rip out the old floor joists and replace them entirely with pressure treated lumber, because I didn't want to put good wood next to rotten wood, because I figure it's like an infection that spreads from old wood to good wood. So they just ripped it all out and just replaced it with pressure treated, whilst still keeping the subfloor and the floor above it. So it was really painful process that they had to do. But they finished that. That was the first shock, because just the cost of the lumber was horrifying to me. But yeah, so they did that. That was the first job. And really, I couldn't do anything until that had been addressed, because there was no way I was going to build new rooms on top of that with more weight and structure, you know, pushing straight down into the crawl space without having that dealt with. And then the next thing I had to do was create footers for these jack stands that are going to hold up all of this new material.
Right.
And then I had to get rid of the old oil furnace and the old oil tank, because those were ancient and the oil tank was just on the edge of starting to leak. So I took that out. I had to take everything apart. Getting that furnace out was an absolute nightmare. And then the most recent thing that, well, you probably see it on next week's Hardcastle Towers video is I did some research. I spoke to people, and around here, people said, well, you just need a Humidex. Just get this Humidex thing. And it's like this vertical unit that you stick to your wall. And at the bottom, it sucks air in, supposedly across the floor, goes through this unit, and then out through the top, which would usually go through a rim joist. So I installed one of those, and it didn't really do anything, to be quite honest with you. And so that's when I realized, you know, I think that kind of thing works for a minor moisture problem, but I think my moisture problem goes a little bit beyond that. I don't have standing water, so I don't have a sump pump, so that's good.
Right.
The thing is, if you're trying to just suck moisture from a dirt floor, well, you can't dehumidify the earth, can you? You know.
No.
So I quickly realized that the Humidex was just a band-aid, and it wasn't really a solution. And that's when I started to look up encapsulation. And I think I'd already seen your videos before that, but then I came back to your videos, and that's when I thought I need some guidance on this. And so I figure encapsulation is the way to go, just to stop that moisture from getting into the timbers, the foundation, going perhaps upstairs, because I don't want to breathe moldy air, right?
Right.
So that's when I realized, after I'd installed that, I'm going to have to take this to the next level. And so that's why we started talking. And now we've got a bit of a plan of action, I hope.
Well, and one of the things I want to talk about is your first thing you mentioned a few minutes ago about somebody going in and sistering good wood against bad wood. It's shocking how many people actually do that. And not just homeowners, but companies. Like, there are companies out there that they will go in and take perfectly good wood and join it to nasty, rotten, moldy wood. And somehow that good wood is not supposed to, as you said, get infected from the mold, you know, without fixing the humidity problem, without fixing the moisture problem. And this has happened in crawl spaces where there is standing water. We've had to go in and, like you mentioned, completely rip out. And I tell you, you want to talk about a big expense. Encapsulation is not a big expense compared to redoing floors and subfloors and post jacks and all of that foundation work that'll have to get done if somebody goes in there and does it incorrectly. And most of the time, the reason why people buy into that is it's a less expensive option to just sister a piece of joist. But if you do that, now you got two pieces of bad wood that you got to cut out, you know, and that's a huge expense. Plus you didn't take care of the problem in the first place. So I'm glad you brought that up, because it's really painful to see homeowners that have told me, yeah, we spent, you know, $20,000 on structural work, and now it's all for nothing because all that new structural work has to get ripped out. So you got to control humidity. You got to do all those things. That's part of the structural process. So good for seeing that. So the other thing I wanted to ask you, Gavin, is what's the timeline on this? Now, it's cold, obviously. Now you're 2 hours time difference?
I think I'm more than that. It's I'm about 3 hours, I think, maybe 4.
And you're in Nova Scotia?
Yeah.
Okay, because which is right next to Maine. Is that right?
Yeah.
Okay, so you're not Eastern time. I would think that you were like closer to Eastern time. So what's your, anyway, time zones freak me out. I'm not good with time zones. But speaking of time, what's your timeline on getting this done? I don't know how easy this would be to do in the winter. I assume a Canadian winter is a lot worse than a Tennessee winter. So you guys just hunkered down until the snow's done and you'll unthaw in the spring, or are you going to try to get this done this winter?
I want to get it done in the winter because it's indoors, right? So this is the kind of work that contractors here, they like this in the winter. So I'm hoping, touch wood, I can find some people to take care of at least the retaining wall for me, and then I'm happy to do all of the grunt work, moving gravel around and doing the plastic. So I'm hoping to get it done as soon as possible. Really, it just depends on how quickly I can get this retaining wall done, and then I guess it depends on how quickly I can get the materials, because
right,
like if I'm in Canada and I'm ordering the 12 mil plastic from you in the States. I don't know how long that would take to arrive. Hopefully pretty quick. So it's materials, and then things like the pea gravel. So I've spent a bit of time thinking about this. If I had, let's say I've got a local supplier, like we've got a whole bunch of excavator guys around here. If I said, can you drop me off like 4 yards of pea gravel? Well, then I have a cold, wet pile of pea gravel outside my house.
Right.
I really want to be shoveling cold, wet gravel into a place that I'm trying to keep dry. So do I do that, or do I buy it in bags? And then if I'm buying it in bags, where have they been stored? Have they been stored inside, or have they been standing out in the yard for 3 months getting rained on?
Right.
So I'm just kind of, you're asking me a question that I can't give you an answer, because there's all these variables I can't control. But if I could get all the materials next week, then this would be done and finished over the winter.
I will tell you that the pea gravel in the bag is stored outside. It's got water in it too. So it's a lose-lose as far as that goes. The only difference is, do you want to carry in a bag of pea gravel, or do you and your wife want to carry in 5-gallon buckets full of pea gravel? Because, that's how you normally transport it. I did meet a guy that, I don't know if you've ever seen those conveyor belts that they use for mining. This guy was digging out his crawl space, and he was like throwing the dirt on the conveyor belt, and he had this elaborate conveyor belt system getting all the dirt out of his crawl space, which I thought was amazing. I mean, he did a great job, and he said the labor it saved him was worth the conveyor belts. I'm not trying to tell you to go out and buy conveyor belts, but somebody's going to have to drag that pea gravel in, whether it's in 5-gallon bucket at a time or a bag at a time. And for us, we feel like the bags are a little bit easier to handle, but we're normally crawling. You in a stand-up crawl with stairs and all that, it might be easier for you to just grab a 5-gallon bucket. And pea gravel by the yard is a lot cheaper than pea gravel by the bag.
Yeah.
So that's
so
the
maybe
other
what
thing
I'll do is
too.
I'll take out a window, because I'm probably going to have to take out a window anyway to pour the concrete. So I could, if I take that window out, just board it up, and then just have a giant pile of gravel. And I might not have a motorized, conveyor belt, but a chute. I could build a wooden chute, no problem, and just shove all that gravel onto that thing, and then spread it around once it's in there. I'm sure I could figure it out. Trust me, I've done worse jobs, far more dirty jobs in my far distant past. And I need the exercise, Michael. I could pay for a gym, or I could just throw gravel around. It's a deal.
That's right. You're going to be crawl space ninja of Canada before this is over with. Or Nova Scotia, or whatever you want to do at this point. I'm kidding. I know you got a lot going on. You're very successful in your career. Listen, did you have anything else to share with our viewers? I mean, I really appreciate you coming on. I'm looking forward to seeing this work myself. I mean, I can't wait to see this transformation of this crawl space. So
I think I'd like to sort of put some feelers out there to anyone who lives in a similar climate to what we have in Nova Scotia. So anyone who's in like Maine, or I would think Vermont as well. I think that they're pretty much the same cold but humid climates in the winter. So if anyone out there has done this before me, and this all sounds familiar, I'd love some suggestions and comments that could sort of like guide me in the right direction. I mean, in addition to what you've already taught me, just people who've done it in this particular climate with the particular challenges that we have here, that would be really useful.
Well, and the other thing that we haven't mentioned is are you still planning on spray foaming the foundation walls and linking that up with the plastic, or are you going to do a different route?
I think that's the way I'm going to do it, but it is just that space where you've got the rim joist that hits the foundation walls, and then where the plastic connects to that, as per your advice, and also maybe just those areas where it's a full exterior wall, and insulate that with spray foam. But I think that's probably the only place that I would use spray foam. I think one of the best bits of advice that you gave me, Michael, was when I first started talking to you. I said, "Oh yeah, I'm just going to spray foam the underside of my subfloor, so that it's really tight and it's really warm, and I won't hear the noise of all these fans and all that kind of stuff. And you taught me right out of that real quick with a very obvious point, which should have been obvious, but I didn't think about it. And that is, if we ever, because the kitchen's above there, right? We've got a shower above there. We've got tons of appliances chugging out water. If there's ever a leak and that water comes down and soaks the floor, it can't escape that spray foam. It's trapped in there, and you'll just get rot, and the whole thing needs to be ripped out. And that is a nightmare of epic proportions that I just would rather avoid. So I think if all I got out of all of our communications was don't do that, well, that was totally worth the price of entry right there, because I'm just going to use bat insulation in the floor and just use the spray foam just for those edges, like you said. And that's not so much about the insulation properties as much as it is about the seal of how that connects the plastic to that part of the wall.
Yeah, and spray foam is great on the subfloor for insulation purposes, but I had a house, we had like 9 leaks in 3 years, either from you know the refrigerator, or you know the toilet, or something, right? Even if the toilet overflows, and even if it's a small leak like that, if it gets down underneath whatever your flooring is, there is no way it's going to dry out. So the risk to me of that happening versus the reward of the spray foam insulation on the subfloor, not that it's not effective, it's very effective. I just don't like the idea of it trapping so much moisture. And even worse is that leak you don't even know about. Yeah. That's gone on for years and years, you know, a little pinhole leak in that stand-up shower that you're going to have put in or whatever, right? And I've seen like just entire bathrooms rotted out because of little pinhole leaks like that. So again, I'm not totally against spray foam. I think it's got its purposes, but I certainly wouldn't want it in my subfloor. I do think that you could, you know, those major holes, right, where the electrical goes in or the plumbing goes in, you shoot some spray foam in those and then put the batting up insulation if you want. And in your climate, I think having bat insulation is a great idea because, you know, it is so cold up there, and you're going to probably see a lot of benefit from that thermal break of the at the subfloor level versus just on the walls of the crawl space. So I think that's a good thing to do. So yeah, if any of you are in that cold region, Minnesota, Wisconsin, places like that, you know, Northwest, if y'all are dealing with some of those issues, you're going to help Gavin out, I'm sure he'd appreciate it. Just comment down below.
Yeah, that'd be great.
Yeah. So tell us a little bit real quick before I let you go about your photography channel. How do they get on that?
Well, I mean, this is what I do full time. It's fototripper with an F. Fototripper is that's my career. That's my job. And I'd never planned on deviating from that. But when I bought the church and, you know, being a YouTuber, full-time YouTuber as well, I thought I might as well just film this whole experience, because not many people go through this. I think people find it interesting. And you know, I like to have a bit of comedy in my videos, and I just knew there'd be lots of opportunities for chuckles and laughter. So yeah, I mean, fototripper is what I do. I'm a landscape photographer. I travel around trying to get beautiful images of beautiful landscapes, and then just kind of film some fun shenanigans along the way. But like I said, yeah, Hardcastle Towers was just a natural progression. And it's funny, I've been doing fototripper for about 5 years, and it's taken a long time to build my audience to a certain level where I can do this full time, and this is my career. And then I launched Hardcastle Towers 6 months ago, and already, you know, it's doing, in terms of, you know, that the viewer ratio to the amount of subscribers that I've got and the comments that I get, already Hardcastle Towers is doing better than Fototripper. But I guess that's why they always have these home makeover shows, right? Because people just want to see it. You know, it's I guess the photography thing's a niche, whereas doing home renovations is something that everybody can relate to. And so I don't know if this will end when I finish the church, or if I'll do something else, because I'll always do some kind of construction project. It's always going to be something. So maybe once the church is done, Hardcastle Towers might continue. And by then it might be this runaway train that's even more successful than the photography gig. I don't know. I'm happy with either direction it takes, but I just want to get in my home. That's what my motivation right now is, just to get the church finished and get in the home so that I don't have to live in rented accommodation or at times the camper. There's been times when we were living just in the camper, and that's okay for a short while, but we got 2 cats, and that gets a little bit close quarters with that cat litter box. I'll tell you right now.
Well, congratulations, Gavin, on both fototripper and Hardcastle. What was it?
You don't even know my channel, Michael. Oh, this is embarrassing.
I remembered fototripper with an F.
Yes, it's Hardcastle Towers.
Hardcastle Towers. My apologies. By the way, if you get a chance to go to fototripper, make sure you check out the one where all the bugs. I never knew there was so many bugs in Nova Scotia. That just, I'm not sure I ever want to go there just because of that. So it's just absolutely amazing. So Gavin, I really appreciate you being on our channel, man. And I'm looking forward to all the work you're going to do. And hopefully you can come back on and give us a summary of everything once it's all done. I appreciate you.
Oh yeah, well, thanks for having me on, and I'll definitely come back and give you some reports. And one day, you know, the finished reveal. And then, yeah, I'd love to get you on my channel too, just to try and get you some exposure in return for all this advice you've given me, which I really appreciate. So yeah, just if anyone does hop over to my channel, you can expect to see Michael there pretty soon, hopefully.
Well, thank you for watching, everybody. And if you want to be a guest on our channel, maybe you got a crawl space you're working on and we can go through it and show some pictures and go through some advice. That's something new that we're doing as well. So Michael Church, Crawl Space Ninja here with Gavin, and we hope you make it a happy and blessed day, and we'll see you later.
Thanks. Bye.